Streaming now.
Yeah. Hello,
On the
everyone,
screen.
and welcome to our Vegan Spirituality online gathering. My name's Lisa Levinson, and I am one of your hosts this evening. I work for In Defense of Animals, and we're so proud to present this program on vegan spirituality to explore veganism as a spiritual practice. We host this program interviewing spiritual leaders from all around the world every month or so. And we also have in-person groups, and you're welcome to join those. You can go to veganspirituality.com and click join a group, and you'll find a local group where you can meet for potlucks and interesting discussions and community rituals, all sorts of fun events. You can also find us on our Facebook page, which is called Vegan Spirituality. So this month we've got a special guest for you, and I'm going to invite my co-host, Judy Carmen, who wrote Peace to All Beings. She's going to introduce our special speaker with you today. Hi, Judy.
Hi, Lisa. Thank you. And once again, thank you for figuring this out. That was amazing. So everybody, that's not two Lisas. That's Lisa and Michael Berenzweig and Reverend Michael Berenzweig. And I get to introduce him, and we're so thrilled to have you with us, Michael. Michael has been vegan for over 25 years. But prior to that, he and Marilyn, his wife, were mostly vegan in 1971, almost 50 years ago. So that's got to be a record for a lot of us. As more information came out, they gave up leather 35 years ago and became strict vegans 25 years ago. And so this was before tofu and all soy milk and all these things. So it's a real honor to be with someone that saw the light so long ago. Michael was ordained as a Vegan Deacon of Compassion in 2018. And in addition to co-hosting and co-producing his own vegan radio show on WBAI-FM Pacifica, he has been a featured speaker on many other radio programs where he has promoted vegan living. He interviewed Rynn Berry, who the late Rynn Berry. We're sad to have lost him. He did a lot of great books, and one of them was Food for the Gods, Vegetarianism and the World's Religions. And Michael interviewed him. Reverend Berenzweig also has a sanctuary for injured and orphaned birds, including starlings, sparrows, chickens, pigeons, and cats. And I guess hopefully they all get along. He's also introduced a segment on Coast to Coast AM with No More, the Yale physicist of EarthSafe International, where they discuss the role of animal agriculture in climate change, and he debated Robert Kennedy on the same subject. He also continues to share the vegan message in many other venues as well. But one of his primary areas of interest, and one thing I know we're all anxious to hear about, is his compelling message about Jesus being vegan. He has researched the subject deeply and believes that Jesus not only practiced veganism, but required it of his followers. He has plans to start his own church based on holistic, organic, communal, grassroots, ethical, compassionate veganism. What a wonderful church that will be. So, Reverend Berenzweig, welcome. And let me start out by asking you about your early days. You're among the earliest vegans, I think, in North America, probably. What was it that inspired the two of you to adopt a way of living long before tofu and non-dairy milks and other items were available?
Well, actually, tofu was available when we got started. We came to veganism through Zen macrobiotics. and that's a Japanese form of eating. Their five highest diets are completely vegan. So we would shop around in Philadelphia for tofu. They did have tofu at that time, but you really had to travel around to get the foods that you needed. But it was worthwhile. What got us started, I guess, was our mutual empathy for animals and for life. Um, I gravitated as a young person towards Buddhism, um, and that leads you to Buddhism is veganism as well. And of course, and by the way, your introduction, there's nothing more to say. I'm semi-joking. You did a great, great introduction. And your book, Peace for All Beings, is really wonderful. Let me just say that too. Yeah, so, I would say Buddhism um, led the path, to veganism, Taoism, but as well, one cannot be in our culture not influenced by the the concept of Jesus and the personhood, you know. And there was always a feeling that, of course, this person had to be right there, with the others. And you mentioned Rynn Berry, his great book, Food for the Gods. That got me started 21 years ago on the very same station that we eventually did vegan programming. That's Nancy Kogel from Roar, Reaching Out for Animal Rights. Um, I heard Rynn Berry in 1998 being interviewed, and he said that Jesus was vegan, and he made some very, very convincing statements. So I got his book. Food for the Gods is a great, great book. It covers all the religions: Taoism, Buddhism, Islam, Jain, um, all the denominations of Christianity, Judaism, and all of them began as vegan requiring, practices. So it's really, really fascinating. And as time went along, I said to myself, well, the most popular person in the world, the most respected person in the world, right? The Son of God, God incarnate, taught, required, commanded veganism. What's up? Let's get this out there and change this world from what it is to what it gloriously could be. So that, um, and the more reading I did, I read Food for the Gods and read the different books that were contained within the bibliography. Um, the Vegetarianism of Jesus Christ by Charles P. Vaslavic. Rynn Berry told me we used to speak regularly that's what inspired him to write Food for the Gods. That reading the Vegetarianism of Jesus Christ, you could call it kind of an eponymous book. He followed Charles Vaslavic on his lecture circuit, and it literally says in that book, church fathers wrote that Jesus commanded me to be vegetarian. So that really is profound. What more can be said? So there we go. I have visions of a movie, which Jesus, the greatest story never told. Um, Jesus, Jesus Christ, vegan, vegan Jesus. Maybe I put too many Jesuses in there, but nonetheless, would be great to make a movie like that, which you could see on every marquee around, the country, around the world. To have an overnight conversion to a true vegan Christianity. So I don't know if that's exactly responding to what you asked, Judy.
Well, you kind of moved into some of the later questions, because that's the main thing we want to learn from you tonight, of course, is about Jesus being vegan. But real quick, before we do that, how about telling us a little more about when I think you got started rescuing animals at the homeless encampment, is that right? And
No,
now you're still,
no.
okay.
It's almost like when we came together, Marilyn and myself, 50 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
We're walking along the street, and little kids would give us cats, little kittens. So we started taking in kittens, wonderful beings. We loved them to death, to life, and that went on. But in 1995, I found a baby bird, a starling, and that's a story in itself. I was walking up the street to our apartment in Bourne Hill, Brooklyn, and I see a bird on the sidewalk. And the way usually 100% of the times birds will fly away when anybody approaches, you know. But this bird wasn't flying away; was staying in the area and not flying away from me. And I noticed that the bird was agitated. So I said to her, I found out it was a she. Um, What's the matter? And she pointed into the, believe it or not, she pointed into the doorway, the pathway, and underneath the garbage can lid, I see the mouth of a baby bird. So it didn't take long to realize that the baby bird had been knocked out of the vine and was under the garbage can, begging its mother to feed her. So we gathered her up, and we were at that point, this is 1995, so we were at food for 25 years. We knew about food, about putting organic foods together. We made a mash for her, and she ate. Things went well the first night, but the morning came, and when I went to feed the baby bird, she wouldn't eat. But this is very distressful. So the baby bird is calling, and her mother, who was a bird from the previous day, came to the window. We're on the first floor in the bushes, and they're calling back and forth to each other because the baby bird is hungry. And I'm saying, this is pitiful. What do? I can't put her out on the sidewalk. She can't even stand up. What do I do? And I said, I got to give it another try, feeding the baby, which I did. And this time it went like a charm. The baby bird ate, and the mother is watching me. And the baby bird is stopping her, begging for food and calling. And the mother looks at me and says, "You did it, she's yours." And she flew away and never came back. And she lived with us for 12 and a half years. We gave her the option, took her outside, bathed her, said, "Take off." And she just went back and forth to each one of our heads and didn't want to go. So she lived with us for 12 and a half years. But then, for some fateful reason, the floodgates just started opening up. We started finding another starling 11 months later, sparrows, pigeons, and at a point we had 12 birds. So that's how it got started. That's how we wound up caring for animals at the homeless tent camp. Because when we came to the homeless tent camp, we came with a number of birds. So we gained the reputation of being caregivers. And not wanting to go along with meat-eating, carnist, allopathic medicine, we delved into and studied homeopathy and herbs and organic diet, and did very, very well. Our second starling lived to 13 and a half. and they're supposed to live 5 or 6 years. So that's, Glory's experiences. It was amazing how the mother knew to communicate with me, to tell me about her baby, and then to come back and to egg me on to feed her child and realize that she's with you. She's in good hands. And she was glorious. Her name, we thought she was a boy. We called her Merton, and I called her Murdy, but she turned out to be a girl. And she was so devoted and friendly and personable. Yeah, so that's how we came to care for animals, for
Wow.
birds.
Oh, thank you for sharing that, Michael. That is a truly vegan lifestyle. You just brought it all together, and what a beautiful story about the birds. Wow.
Oh yeah, excuse me for saying so, but I find animals in a great many cases to be much more intelligent and sensitive, than people are. We had a living here a few years ago, 3 years ago. We're sitting here at spring, and I see a hummingbird graze the window in the room I'm sitting in right now. Graze the window, touch the window, but not hard. And it might have been a day or 2 or 3. And it took 2 or 3 days to realize that hummingbird was saying, put a feeder out. It was looking right in saying, put a feeder out, which is what we did. And the hummingbird was there all summer and came back the next 2 years too. So, I mean, talk about psychic intelligence.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Yeah, they have so much to teach us.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Look at the yogis, all the different positions are animal positions that enhance the life of a human. Mm-hmm.
Right. Well, thanks. So getting back to this other amazing subject of Jesus being vegan, I've read that book too, the Vegetarianism of Jesus, and I highly recommend it. And but before I go on, I wanted to mention to everybody there's a video about you and Marilyn and the birds, and it's how can they find it? Does Lisa have that put on?
That's
In the chat.
Nancy Kogel, who I mentioned before.
Mm-hmm.
I can send that link to Lisa. I did send it to you.
Right.
And I put it up on my page and shared it with a number of people and shared it in the public, but I can send that to you. That's actually the first part. I believe there's going to be 2 or 3 more parts, which will delve more so into Jesus being vegan. So yeah, it's Nancy did a very, very, very good job, an excellent, excellent job.
Yeah, it was really good. I watched it, and so maybe I don't know. Lisa's muted right now, but she might be able to put it on the chat box so people can look it up. So,
by the way, if I could say, it's an honor to be on your program, which was graced by Pastor Rob Monroe of the Humanitarian Church and Reverend Carol Saunders and Father Donatello Iocco. So great program that you have.
well, thank you. Yeah, we're just we're loving it and trying to help all of us think all this through and figure out more ways that we can educate people about how important it is to be vegan and how much good it can do for the animals, the earth, and us.
It's paramount.
So, yeah.
It's number 1, far and away.
Yes.
Right.
So one of your main teachings is that Jesus was vegan and taught nonviolence. So those, as we know, those teachings have been lost.
Well, not
What
exactly,
happened?
not exactly lost. They were purposely buried
Yeah, so
by
tell
the,
us about that.
well, by the
Hmm.
the Romans who took over Christianity and turned it on its head. You know, it was, for example, you said the eponymous book, The Vegetarianism of Jesus Christ by Charles Slavic. The subtitles are The Communalism, Pacifism, and Vegetarianism of Primitive Christianity. Historical evidence that Jesus and the disciples not only practiced, not only were vegetarian, but taught the practice to their followers. And the book expounds on that greatly. But what's also more than intriguing is that you can use the Bible as it exists, to extract this, um, you know, the same conclusion. The matter of fact, that just every day is a learning day and a way to hone your abilities to communicate. Just this previous day, I was on a Christian vegan site, and we were having a discussion about this. And this gentleman who's vegan, but a Christian Bible zealot, was saying to me, where in the Bible does this prohibit eating meat? And let's see, the picture seems to have frozen. I don't hear them now. That's funny.
Michael, we can still hear you, so you can
Oh,
continue.
okay. Yeah.
Oh, well,
Okay,
it
great.
stopped for me.
Yeah, it stopped. It stopped. You froze, Judy, and I didn't hear you. Right.
Oh,
Okay. Good.
okay,
You're back. Fantastic.
okay.
Fantastic.
Huh.
Okay. So this person said to me, "Where does it say in the Bible that you can't eat meat?" Right. And I don't want to be condescending. You know, I feel like writing back that's silly, because where does it say in the Bible that you can't bust a person's window down and steal all their accoutrements? You know, it doesn't say that in the Bible, right? But equivalent to that is, as a matter of fact, it does say you can eat meat. Now, I hope that's not shocking everybody and saying, what is he talking about? After all, us talking about veganism. But it's a question of nomenclature, okay? Vernacular, colloquialism, the fashion of the day, you know, that is connected with language. And if you look at the etymology of the word meat from Skeat's Etymological Dictionary of 1611, when the King James Version was fashioned and issued, it says meat is any food which is solid and is not liquid. Okay, meat is any food that is solid and not liquid. So reading the King James Version of the Bible, it says, I have given you every seed-bearing plant and every fruit-bearing seed. In other words, all vegetables. This for you shall be meat. So yes, we can eat meat, but God commands us to eat vegetables as meat. That is our food. So there's a commandment right off the bat. And Jesus accentuates it. Jesus says God commanded us to eat meat, to eat vegetable meat, and that's what we eat. You know, so language is very interesting. You can manipulate people, you can distort things, you can pervert things, but there you go. The original commandment was to be purely vegetarian and vegan, and that's the Garden of Eden.
Right. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So what do you say? I mean, you've been doing this for a long time. You must have gotten all kinds of responses from
Oh,
Christians, and we need help in talking to Christians too. I've talked to some who, and I've said, you know, Jesus was probably vegan, and they just go, yeah, he probably was. But it's like it doesn't impact them personally.
that's, I don't know what to say about that because he wasn't probably vegan. He was vegan. Okay. Not to be too pushy, but he was vegan. But that's distraughtly marveling because how they could say, yeah, he probably was, but it doesn't impact them. I mean, I can't fathom that. This is Son of God, God incarnate, who was vegan. And Jesus says, be perfect as thy Father is in heaven. Psalms 145:9 says, and his tender mercy shall be over all his works. So we're supposed to emulate, go forth and be like me. So for them to say he probably wasn't, it doesn't faze them, I don't think it's that hopeless. They can't be serious. If they say that he probably was, and he more than probably was, uh, I don't know what to say. If that doesn't faze them, to stop them in their tracks and say, God incarnate was vegan, taught it, required it, commanded it, this is what we must do. I don't
Do,
know. Yes.
do you think that some of the people that came after Jesus, like Paul and some of the others who wanted to expand Christianity, thought maybe it's too hard to demand that they be vegan, and so they kind of loosened up the rules?
Well, it's difficult to say about Paul because there are so many angles on Paul. There's a terrific, I was planning on reading from some of these books, but I guess I won't do that, read directly from the books. But in The Vegetarianism of Jesus Christ, Charles P. Slavic, page 44 does a terrific job on some of the things that Paul says. And interestingly enough, yesterday on Facebook, they were citing Romans 14. And Paul, dare I say, is maybe schizoid, bipolar, excuse me, sorry. But he starts out by saying that those weak in faith only eat vegetables. So, of course, the meat eaters point to that, but they forget there's a whole chapter there with 20 plus verses. And by the time he gets to verse 21, he says, it is good neither to eat meat nor to drink wine. And the word good and God are synonymous. That's why they call it the good book. So he's saying it is God not to eat meat nor to drink wine. So this is how he concludes. So Paul is caught in midair. Keith Akers' book, The Lost Religion of Jesus, that's another great book. The Forgotten Beginnings of Creation and Christianity, outstanding, which Keith Akers was involved with as well. He, in his book, A Vegetarian Source Book, quotes Paul as saying, I am vegetarian, I want to be pure, so when I meet Jesus, I will be pure. So Paul is a mixed bag. It's difficult to say about Paul. At times he talks against vegetarianism, and at times he talks very much for it. But then again, one has to take into account that books have been distorted and rewritten. And the Bible itself says to, take separate the wheat from the chaff. You know, realize the beautiful verses and realize the verses that don't conform and, you know, are in accordance with compassion and kindness and, you know, are helpful to life. You know, it's upon us to make these decisions and to be discerning. So yeah, a lot of the writing in the Bible is quite confusing. But, and if I could recommend, there's a spiritual awakening radio, James Bean. He's got some good material that one can not only read, but listen to. Spiritual Awakening Radio, James Bean, on the original Christians being purely vegetarian, vegan. And the reason I'm bringing it up is that Hieronymus, who became Saint Jerome, makes a very, very pitiful statement, saying that the stinking juices, the stinking juices of meat were shoved down our throat. Jesus of Christ has joined the beginning with the end, and we no longer have to eat. We no longer eat this food. And that truly is what is the format of the Bible that very, very few people point out, because the very first page of the Bible does command veganism, Genesis 1:29. And the second, that's the first chapter. The second chapter literally says another account of creation, which is a little confusing, but you know, we got to go with the with what's there, right? But this time they call it the tree of life. And Keith Akers points out that one of the great prophets who Jesus stood by, who were vegan and who spoke out against animal sacrifices, Amos, spoke in terms of opposition. You know, what was peaceful, what was violent, what was evil, what was detrimental, okay, what was good. And let me see where, I'm losing it a little bit. Yes, the revelation of St. John the Divine, which closes out the Bible, literally says in chapter 22 that the nations shall be healed eating from the tree of life. So going right back to the beginning, right back to the vegan commandment that from the outset of the Bible.
Thanks. Yeah, I will look that up. I had not heard that before about Revelation 22.
Yeah, the revelation of St. John the Divine. It's also called the revelation of Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
Right, but the last chapter literally says to join the end with the beginning, healing all the nations, going back to the Garden of Eden vegan diet.
So, okay, so at this point, I'm thinking we probably have some questions, and we could maybe open up for questions. Lisa, can we do that now?
Sure, we can do that. Great. Well, thank you for that wonderful interview. It's so great to learn a bit more about you, Michael, and all of your.
Would you mind if I showed a few of these books? Can you see these books?
Sure. Yes, we can see them. Go right ahead.
Okay. That's Food for the Gods by Rynn Berry. This is the Vegetarianism of Jesus Christ. This is the Forgotten Beginnings of Creation and Christianity. Outstanding book. Very inspiring. And The Lost Religion of Jesus by Keith Akers. Okay, great.
Great. Well, thank you so much. And we have had Keith. We've interviewed him before on our program as well, and it's so great to have both of you. with us. So I'd like to invite anyone who would like to join us by asking a question. You can raise hands, is how they do it on this platform. If you'd like to ask a question, you can also type it into the chat box. If you're with us on Facebook Live, you can also type that in directly into the news feed. Now, let's see about our chats that we have to see if anybody had a chat that they had, a little question or two. And I do know that we have a question on Facebook, so I'm going to quickly go there and get that for you. So we had a couple questions, and one of them was about if you have any evidence, like what would you use to cite that uh, that Jesus was consuming or was not consuming dairy products. That was one of the questions. A gal named Paula, who's joined us before. We're happy to have her with us, and she's asking if there's any evidence that Jesus did not consume dairy.
Mm. Well, what is there evidence that Jesus did consume dairy? I mean, you can turn it right back around. There's the evidence that Jesus was purely vegan, which is what is paramount, was a pure vegetarian, purely vegan, is that founding church fathers wrote that they were from the Essenes, the Nestorians, who eventually became the original Judaic Christians, and they were known to be purely vegetarian, vegan. So that's the evidence, one of the evidentiary factors that established that Jesus was vegan. So there's no proof that Jesus ate dairy at all. If you read the literature, it says they abstain from all foods derived from animals.
Well, thank you for answering that. There was a museum exhibit going around for quite some time that was called the Dead Sea Scrolls, and
Mm-hmm.
that exhibit did give detailed accounts of Jesus's life and his daily life, in fact, what he did every day. And it was coming from the perspective of the Essenes, and they showed that he was eating dried fruits and other things along those lines. There's another question from Paula. She was mentioning that after the flood seems to be the main excuse from when she's been talking to people who are questioning
Yeah.
veganism and religion. So how do you respond to those
Well,
sorts of questions when you get
there's two aspects there. One is after the flood, they're saying there was no vegetation, so they had to eat meat. This is the proclamation. Then what did the herbivorous animals who they ate live on if there was no vegetation? It
good
doesn't make
question.
sense. It doesn't make sense. It doesn't work. It doesn't jive. Number two, if you notice, and this was on the Facebook discussion yesterday, and it always comes up. Genesis 9, 3 and 4 says, just as I have given you every green plant, I now give you everything that moves for food. I've read different translations, and some of them say animals for food. But it does also say that you cannot eat the flesh with the life force therein, comma, the blood. And this is what gives the Jews the notion to drain all the blood. But that is not indicated. There's no instruction to drain all the blood. But they take it upon themselves, if God is saying you can't ingest blood, to drain the blood. There's only one catch-22. You cannot drain all the blood. It's impossible. So you're eating blood. So any way you look at it, it's verboten to eat animal flesh because the Bible itself says you can't ingest blood.
Wow, thank you for clarifying that.
Hmm.
We have another question. This is from Dr. Mighty May, and she's asking, what can we do to raise awareness about the original Christians being vegan to present day congregations?
Get in there. You know, go to the churches, communicate with them. Um, I I went to the Seventh-day Adventist church here, and I got 4 people to change over to being vegan. That, believe it or not, Seventh-day Adventists are known to be more prone to be vegan, but out of the 60 parishioners, only 2 were. So getting 4 more on the boat was pretty good. You have to communicate. You know, when I first got there, I got into a little bit of a heated discussion with one of the church. What do they call him? Um, Elders. And he said to me, "Animals have no soul." And you know, I had to keep from exploding, but I kept my cool and said, "Do you know Hebrew?" And he said, "No." I said, "Well, if you knew Hebrew, you would read in the Bible that says animals were born with living souls, nefesh hayim, nefesh being soul and hayim being life. And the word animal itself, the etymology of it, is mind, spirit, soul. So for you to say that animals don't have souls is totally erroneous. It's fallacious, according to the very Bible that you say you believe in. So we have to communicate with people and dispel them of their false notion of what they've been taught, because they've been taught incorrectly by people who have agendas, who want a lot of money, who want to eat a lot of meat, who are materialistic. And that's exactly the opposite of what Jesus was.
Mm. Wow. So we have a couple other questions for you. We're getting a few questions tonight.
I'm
One is,
sorry, the person who just you mentioned her name, the person who just asked the question.
oh, no, I'm just asking a different question now.
Oh, okay.
So the other question, this is someone named Lauren, who we know very well. Thanks for joining us, Lauren. She's asking, can you speak to the loaves and fishes
Oh, Lord, help me.
from
That
a vegan perspective? From a vegan
well,
perspective.
that's what every one of them brings up. That's tops on their list, and you always have to equate the emperor's new clothes to this incident, and that falls into place with so many things applying to people. People see what they want to see, what is not there, and don't see what they don't want to see, which is there. And there are so many angles to this. Um, as a matter of fact, the movie that I would like to make, um, Jesus, the greatest story never told, right? Um, the truth, vegan Jesus, would open up with a, a stadium full of Christians, okay? Let's say a Billy Graham type situation. And, you know, people are cheering, stadium after stadium, thousands upon thousands of Christians. And you walk in there and say, how many times is the feeding of the multitudes recounted in the Bible? And everyone would go silent because none of them know. None of them know how many times the feeding of the multitudes is recounted in the Bible. And it's recounted 8 times. 3 in Matthew, 3 in Mark, 1 in Luke, and 1 in John. And the third time that it's recounted in Matthew and Mark, it's directly quoted from Jesus. It's not a narrative. And he says, you forget, you did not understand when I fed you with the loaves. And he purely says, I fed you with the loaves. He does not say the fish. When Jesus is directly speaking to them. So that's 2 times of mass importance, because that's being quoted by Jesus directly. I fed you with the loaves. Okay, so that's 2 down where the fishes are omitted. The first instance of Matthew 14, if you read it, it says, he took the loaves and gave them to the disciples and asked them to distribute it. It says he took the loaves and gave them to the disciples. It doesn't say he gave the fishes to the disciples. That's 3 down. So right away, we're getting 3 out of 8. The first one in Mark says those who ate of the loaves were 4,000. It does not say they ate of the fishes. So that's 4 down already. That do not. So that, we could even go on with other material there that's quite revealing in relation to the feeding of the multitude. Founding church fathers, Irenaeus, Arnobius, Eusebius, write about it in the first few centuries. And they only speak of the loaves being fed in the feeding of the multitude. So there you go.
Great. Well, thank you, Michael, for addressing each one of these specific mentions in the Bible.
Mm-hmm.
That's really, really helpful.
As well in other accounts, of Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, Jesus says, how many loaves do you have? He never says how many fish do you have. And as well, Rynn Berry did a very good translation in the last gospel, the gospel according to John, where he points out that the word used is upsaria in Greek. And that's a spread, a Mediterranean spread made of tahini and pickled vegetables. So again, you have a vegetarian bread, bread adorned food. So again, no fish.
So I'm going to share another question for you. And it looks like we have even a raised hand here that we can address. Rebecca Allen is asking this question. Do you have any indication that Jesus was pained by the lack of people understanding not the harm of eating animals?
Oh, pain?
Mm-hmm.
Pain was miserable. What was, it was excruciating, storming into the sacrificial temple. That's as a matter of fact, that's a great question, because that's why these books are so great. The ones that I brought up, that I have mentioned and put in, brought up to be photographed. The forgotten beginnings of creation in Christianity, when Jesus stormed the temple, he says that Martin Luther translated it as, you have turned my father's house into a murderer's pit. Now, this is a sacrificial animal temple. Okay, and Rynn Berry, the final gospel, the gospel according to John, translates it as, you have turned my father's house into a meat market, a butcher shop. And that drove Jesus crazy. That's why he was killed. As a matter of fact, so yeah, was suffering because of that people would not, listen to the spiritual vegan message. Oh, it was paramount.
So thank you for addressing that. We have lots of questions for you. We'll have a couple more here. And one is from your dear friend, Nancy Kogel, who put
Yay!
together that wonderful video, which,
Yeah.
Nancy, if you'd like to, you can put the link in the chat box. And
Oh,
we
by
can
the way,
share.
Nancy does a great program on New York City cable, a great vegan program, and is a tireless activist.
Yes, she is. So Nancy's asking, she says, a lot of people say animals have no souls and therefore their lives don't matter. How would you respond to that?
Well, it's good to reinstate it. The Bible literally says on the sixth day, you know, the prime creation were the animals before humans. You know, last but not least, maybe in this case it is least. You know, we were the last. But it did say that animals were created with living souls, nefesh chayim. So this is a supposition that is, you know, spurious. It's slanted. It's prejudiced. You know, it's not true. It's not factual at all. Animals, according to the Bible, were created with souls. If we're going to use that kind of terminology.
Okay, well, thank you. And let's see. So you did such a great job of answering the question of multiplying the loaves and the fishes. That was one we've had a few times here. And let's see. Also, there's a question. How does one become ordained as a Vegan Deacon of Compassion?
Well, okay. We're not on good terms anymore. I just a little bit touchy to go into this, but I spoke with when I saw him on your program. I saw a vegan pastor, and I called him up to give him support and say any way I could support you, please let me know, and if we could work together, that would be wonderful. So we developed an association, and we started, you know, telling each other about each other. And I mentioned that we took care of animals, and he thought my knowledge of the Bible was pretty darn good. As a matter of fact, Minister Frank Hoffman thinks that I've scrutinized the Bible well enough to communicate these things, like the loaves and the fishes, you know. So as we were talking, we became very friendly. And one day he said to me, I'm going to make you minister of kindness. I said, okay. You know, I'm not asking for it. It sounds good, you know, if you think that it's warranted. Okay, you know. And little time went past, and he brought it up to his church, and they said, well, he doesn't have the experience, so we can't exactly make him a minister. And he mentioned deacon. And he finally sent me a legalized document, and it said the Reverend, it said Reverend Michael Berenzweig, and then it said Deacon of Compassion, Ordained Vegan Deacon. So that came about from the presbytery of the church. And I don't know if he wants me to mention the church, being that we're not on good terms, but they were the ones who decided that. You know, I didn't vie for it. It's nice to have because people would say, oh, this person's a reverend. If he's talking about Jesus being vegan and Christianity being vegan, he could, you know, he could know what he's talking about with that title. So that's how it came about.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Michael. And there's maybe a couple more questions, and then we'll bring our gathering to a close, and we'll do our closing prayer. One question is connected to the other, and one is it's Paula Franklin asking, are you a Messianic Jew? And the second part of this question is, was Jesus essentially crucified for his position on animal slaughter?
Yes, the second one, without a doubt. Even the Bible indicates that when he broke into the sacrificial temple and said, close down the butcher shop, close down the meat market, close down the murderer's pit. That's what the priests were saying, how do we kill this guy? So yes, he was. And I'm not exactly sure what Messianic Jew is. Um, could she explain that a little bit?
Well, I think in this case, she's asking if you identify as a Messianic Jew. So I guess the answer would be no if you haven't heard of it.
I would identify myself as, in the same ballpark that you're in, that, in interfaith. My favorites are Buddhism and Taoism, but if Christianity and Judaism and Islam are right there in the vegan boat, they're all wonderful.
Right. Well, thank you again. This has been such a wonderful opportunity to hear all of your knowledge. And we have people who've been joining us, and we're very excited. Nancy also shared with us that she produces a weekly TV show for public access TV in Manhattan, New York City. It's MNN, Manhattan Neighborhood Network Television.
Fantastic.
It's Saturday midnights, channel 34 in Manhattan. So that's how you can connect with Nancy Kogel. So I think it's time for us to do our closing prayer. And we've invited you, Michael, if you'd like to read something or share something with us today.
Let me see. Oh.
And for everyone else who's joined us, we want to especially thank you for the time that you've shared with us today. We have a wonderful group of people who've signed in on Facebook Live and also just through our webinar. And we hope that you'll join us for future online gatherings. We do these every month or so. And once you've registered, you can continue on with us each time we offer one. And we'll be also starting a podcast soon, too. So some exciting things coming up. Yeah, Michael, did you want to share?
Well, I was thinking of possibly a prayer.
Yeah, sounds great.
And the prayer could be that all of us, holistic, organic vegans, compassionate, ethical, communal vegans, band together and work together at changing this world into a great world from the horrible slaughterhouse world that it is. And a big part of it would be revealing to the various religious institutions that the core of spirituality is exactly vegan spirituality. Amen.
Amen.
Yes. So thank you. It's such a perfect way to close out our evening together. It's a very special time that we have for the people who've joined and the people who helped to prepare this event each time we meet, because we are truly exploring veganism as a spiritual practice together. We're co-creating this as we go, and that's part of the nature of vegan spirituality, creating that common bond of compassion for all living beings. So we hope that you enjoy the rest of your evening. We hope that we hear from you again. If you'd like to register, if you're watching this online, you can do so at idausa.org/vegan spirituality. If you type that in, then you'll be able to register for this, and you'll get reminders every month, every week, every hour before our program. So again, thanks to everyone for joining us. Have a wonderful evening, and may peace be with you and with all beings.
Praise the Lord.
Bye, everybody.
Bye, everyone. Good night.
Good night.